Hi friends, today is Wednesday, March 10th, and with Reading with Principal Rabb-Patterson, we're continuing on with 50 Amazing American Women Who Have Changed the World by Laurie Calkhoven, illustrated by Patricia Castelao. And today we're going to read about Nellie Bly and Laura Ingalls Wilder. Nellie Bly, groundbreaking journalist, fact file, born May 5th, 1864 in Cochrane Mills, Pennsylvania. Spouse Robert L. Seaman, children none. Died January 27, 1922 in New York, New York. Elizabeth Jane Cochrane, known as Nellie Bly, grew up competing with two older brothers. She was nicknamed Pink because she loved to wear frilly pink dresses. Nellie's father died when she was 6 and her mother struggled to support the family. At 15, Nellie went to school to be a teacher, but she couldn't afford to stay. When she read an article in Pittsburgh newspaper that said working women were a monstrosity, Nellie sent an angry letter to the editor. He hired her to be a reporter and gave her the pen name Nellie Bly. After 2 years, Nellie moved to New York City and made a name for herself writing for the New York World. She wrote about the lives of ordinary women and the poor. Then she had an idea to take a trip around the world in less than 80 days and beat the record for Phyllis Fogg, see sidebar. Nellie's editor said it couldn't be done, especially by a woman. She said if he didn't send her, she'd find a newspaper that would. Nellie traveled by ship, by train, and even by donkey. On the last leg of her journey, crowds cheered, bands played, and fireworks lit the sky. Everyone wanted Nellie to beat the record, and she did. She made it back to New York in 72 days, 6 hours, and 11 minutes. 10 days in a madhouse. Nellie's first job for the New York World was to report on the women's lunatics asylum in New York City. She had to pretend to be insane so that a judge would send her to the asylum. When the newspaper got her release 10 days later, Nellie wrote about the terrible beatings, freezing cold baths, and rotten food. The story made Nellie famous. Around the world in 80 days. Nellie was trying to beat the record of a fictional character, not someone who had actually had an around-the-world adventure. Phyllis Fogg was the hero of Jules Verne's popular novel Around the World in 80 Days. And that is Miss Nellie Bly. Laura Ingalls Wilder, pioneer author. Fact file, born February 7th, 1867, near Pepin, Wisconsin. Spouse, Almanzo Wilder. Children, Rose Wilder Lane. Died February 10th, 1957, in Mansfield, Missouri. Laura Ingalls was born in the big woods of Wisconsin. Her family, Pa, Ma, and big sister Mary, lived in a log cabin. When Laura was 2, they crossed the prairie in a covered wagon and settled in Kansas. They built a house and cleared land for a farm. Then they discovered that the land belonged to the Osage Indians, so that they had to return to Wisconsin. As girls, Laura and Mary churned butter, sewed quilts, washed dishes, and helped Ma with the housework. At night, Pa played his fiddle. Sometimes they could hear wolves howling outside. When Laura was 7, the family filled their covered wagon and set out for Minnesota. They settled on the banks of Plum Creek, near the town of Walnut Grove, where Laura and Mary went to school. Swarms of grasshoppers destroyed Pa's wheat crop, and the family moved again, this time to run a hotel in Iowa. It was hard work, and they missed the prairie. 2 years later, they left Iowa and settled in Dakota Territory. There, Laura met her husband, Almanzo Wilder. With their daughter, Rose, they moved to a farm in the Ozark Mountains. It was Laura's last move in a covered wagon. She traveled to many other places, but from there on, she always called Rocky Ridge Farm home. Laura's daughter Rose became an author. When Laura decided to write stories based on her life, she turned to Rose for help. Little House in the Big Woods, published in 1932, was so popular that Laura went on to write many more novels about her life as a pioneer girl. Fall treats. In Wisconsin, Laura and the other children looked forward to a once-a-year treat roasted pigtail. Pigs were roasted in the falls so families would have meat for the winter. Mary's eyes. A high fever left Mary blind when she was 14. So Laura became her sister's eyes. She described things in detail and reported her school lessons at night so Mary could learn too. This early practice must have helped Laura when she became a teacher at 15 and later a writer. And that was Laura Ingalls Wilder. Have a good evening, friends.